Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So if you've been following along for a while, you know that on this year's episodes of Freaky Friday Fiction, I so far have finished books 1 and 2 from the Secret Book Scone Society by Ellery Adams. The second book in that series was called The Whispered Word, and I am currently reading the Book of Candlelight, which is book number 3. And I'm taking you guys along with me. So if you haven't seen those other 2 episodes, I will link them below, and you guys can hear my thoughts on books 1 and 2. So far, I've been reading for about an hour and a half, and I'm to chapter 7, which is page 85, and I am loving this one just as much. Chapter 1 was such a beautifully written chapter, like the descriptions of everything. Ellery Adams is so good at making you feel completely immersed in the story. So if you've been following along, you know that we are following the main 4 characters, which is a group of women who have formed kind of this bond and friendship and a book club / small town sleuth group called the Secret Book Scone Society. And their names are Nora, June, Hester, and Estella. And in each one of our stories, we have a new murder mystery that the group kind of comes together to help solve. Nora is our main character, and each book we kind of get some new characters. So far, up to chapter 7 in book number 3, we have met Danny and Marie, who are a husband and wife team who are Cherokee Indians, and they sell their pottery and handmade wares at these like farmers markets that Nora goes to. She goes to all of these farmers markets and like little pop-up vendors to get new items for her bookstore, because Nora owns the bookstore, and she finds what she calls shelf enhancers. And she met Danny and Marie at one of the pop-up farmers markets that she was at, and she bought some pottery from Danny. So we've met him, and then we've also met Sheldon Vega, who is an older man who loves books. Whoop. Sorry, my puppy's barking. Who loves books just as much as Nora. And I really love Sheldon. He's an older man who has never been in a relationship, and he loves books, but he also suffers from fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis. And so some days he has really great days, and some days he has really bad days. And Nora just has this really strong connection to him already. And I also have an autoimmune disorder, and so it's like I can very much relate to how Sheldon feels sometimes, and getting little glimpses of his character has been really fun. We have also met Patty and Lou, who are the new proprietors of the what is it? It's called the Rose and it's such a pretty name. They own the Inn of Mist and Roses, which is just sounds like this beautiful place. So it was kind of this Gothic style inn that was built in the 1800s. And we've kind of gotten a little bit of like its backstory. But so far in this, we've already had our first death. Of course, just like with the other books, it doesn't appear as though it was murder, but Nora is starting to ask questions because she's feeling like there are some things going on behind the scenes. And this one has a little bit of like a kind of like ghost story in a way. There's another character that we don't know anything about who kind of keeps showing up. And then with the story of like the backstory of the inn, supposedly a man purchased the inn for his wife, or built the inn for his wife, I don't remember. And her spirit or ghost is said to walk around the gardens in the mist with her roses. And when the garden gets misty, you can still smell the scent of roses. So it's kind of interesting. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in that. I'm really enjoying this one as well, and I'm very curious to see what's going on. I'm definitely thinking like Nora, that more is behind the death of our murder victim. So I'm curious to see. This one actually had me very intrigued just from the back. So the back of this one, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I don't want to give anything away. A crucial clue may lie within the stone walls of the Inn of Mist and Roses, a diary over a century old and splattered with candle wax that leads Nora and her friends through a maze of intrigue and onto the trail of a murder. It's just, yeah. So this one, like, not only does it have the cozy vibes, and we're back in Miracle Springs with all of our favorite characters, but there's like this whole like hidden mystery thing and a spooky inn and kind of a ghost story. So I'm very much intrigued by this one and already enjoying it so much. So I will check back in with you guys after I have read a little bit more. And yeah, I will keep you guys updated. Good morning, friends. So I'm just sitting out in the backyard working on my way through the Book of Candlelight. So I didn't get quite as far as I wanted to yesterday. I only got to about halfway. So I'm right on about chapter 12. And up until this point, our story has kind of been two different stories kind of going along. We have a lot going on with Lou and Patty, who are the owners of the, and a hidden journal they have found that was written by Rose, whose family owned the inn during the Civil War. And then we've also had the mystery of what happened to our murder victim, dead body, however we want to say it. And a lot of things are kind of coming up with that. And Nora, our main character, keeps seeing red cardinals. And there's a lot of folklore that says that red cardinals are supposed to be some sort of a messenger. And so she's trying to figure out if that is a message for her or if it was a message that was meant for the person that has passed away. And so it had kind of been like these dual stories, and I was waiting for it to kind of connect, and I think it's finally starting to do that. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen and how these two stories go together. I think in my head I've kind of figured out what the connection might be, but I'm not 100% sure. But we've also met 3 new characters. So we have met Georgia and Bo, are staying at the inn. Then we've also met a young man named Micah, who is also staying at the inn, and he's like a, hiker, and he just kind of comes and goes, and he's just constantly traveling. We've just barely met him. And unfortunately, something very sad has happened to one of our main characters. So I'm very curious to see. This one has been like the majority of the beginning of the book, the first half of the book, I felt like it was really just kind of just a pretty story and kind of just a lot of unpacking of the characters that have been introduced. And now that I'm halfway through, I feel like it's really starting to pick up, and Nora is really starting to get a lot more information. In addition, I don't know what it is about Sheldon. So Sheldon is one of the new characters that I talked about yesterday, and I just adore his character. He's an older man who has kind of formed a friendship with Hester and especially with Nora, and he stays at the inn. He came to Miracle Springs, like I said yesterday, because he suffers from rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia. But I don't know what it is. Also, by the way, don't I just look lovely this morning? Well, like I said, guys, real life, real vlogs. He reminds me of the actor. Leslie Jordan. And I don't know if you guys, I'll put a picture of him here, but he's in Call Me Kat, and he was on Will and Grace. He's been lots of movies, but I don't know what it is about Sheldon's character, but in my head, that's just kind of who I picture. So I don't know why, but I just do. And he refers to, in the scene I just read, they're at a dinner party at the inn, and he keeps referring to Georgia and Bo as Ken and Barbie. And so Ken and Barbie apparently are very sophisticated, and Sheldon's character says he just doesn't feel like as sophisticated as them, and he worries that he'll do something rude like yawn while they're talking. So I don't know what it is about him, but he's just very charming and very cute, and I'm very curious to see what's going to happen to his character in this story. I'm also curious to see how Micah's character plays out, because he's mentioned at the beginning of the book as a character, but we've just now met him, so I'm curious to see how he ties into things, as well as Georgia and Bo, or Ken and Barbie. So I'm still very much enjoying it. I am very intrigued now, like I said, that the two stories are kind of coming together, because with the inn we kind of have this whole like ghost story, hidden secrets, this diary piece. It has a lot to do with Rose. The diary was hers, and they found a bunch of things that were hers, and somehow Lou, who is one of the owners, seems like she has a connection that goes beyond what she's just told everybody to Rose. And so we've kind of had that whole story going on. And then, like I said, we've had this whole other story with our murder victim, and Nora trying to figure out what that is, and all of these, sightings of this red cardinal. I don't really want to give too much more away about that side of the story, because then that does very much tell you who the dead body is, although technically the back of the book tells you already who the dead body is going to be. But I know lots of people, my best friend Rachel included, don't like to read the backs of books. They like to go into it blind, so I don't want to say any more about that, because that would kind of give it away. But yes, so far the writing and the scenery of this one has been very beautiful, but it did almost feel like two completely separate stories up until this point. So I'm going to dive back in, because like I said, something pretty bad just happened to one of our main four Secret Book and Scone characters, and so I want to kind of figure out what's going on with that and see if this connection to the two sides of our story is finally going to kind of get explained. Wanted to check back in with everybody. I am just about ready to start chapter 15, which is page 205. So I have just about 90-ish pages left. And oh my goodness. So we just had our second dead body of the story, one chapter back in chapter 13. And our stories are definitely coming together now. And two of our main characters have been the targets of some pretty bad stuff. This one is such an interesting, maze. This one to me feels very Agatha Christie, where there's so many things going on that really do all connect, but they're just now kind of starting to connect. And so you're really trying to figure it out and guessing every step of the way what's going on. And I'm really starting to suspect one of the characters, and I'm really, really keeping my fingers crossed that one of the characters that I like doesn't end up having some dark past. So, like I said, I'm only about 90 pages from the end, and I'm just sitting out here still enjoying it on the back porch. It is hot today, but there is a nice breeze, and so I've made myself an iced coffee, and I'm just gonna sit out here and try to knock out these last 90 pages, because I am so intrigued to figure out who our murderer is, because I just don't know. This one has been a true maze, and it's just got me going in so many different directions. So I really don't. I literally just spilled coffee all over myself and all over my book. It's all down my dress. It is all over my book. So that was a bummer. Anyway, back to reading. You guys, I just finished The Secret Book and Scone Society, book number 3, The Book of Candlelight by Ellery Adams. I am having so many feelings about this one. So it's really hard to sum up what happens in this story without giving away information, so I won't really do that. But I absolutely loved how this story wove together. And for some reason, the way it's written, it very much reminded me of one of my very favorite books, which is The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton, because there's this element of history and this like hidden story within a story. This one had me crying. So the murders that happened in this story were sad. They were very sad. You felt very connected to the people that died, even though you had really only met them very briefly. But I love how everything in this story wove together and how it turned out in the end. I am not at all surprised by who the murderers were, because by about the end of the book, I had figured it out. I was worried throughout a lot of the story that it would be a particular person. But by the time it was revealed, I wasn't overly surprised, but the reasoning behind it was a little bit different from what I was expecting. But there was just something about this book, and in each of the books we've met new characters, but the characters that we met in this particular story, I just am so connected to them, and I really hope that some of them go into the 4th book, which is Ink and Shadows, which I'll be reading next. So I'll be taking you guys along for that one as well. But yeah, I'm left feeling sad, but also just I love the way this story wrapped up. With each of the books, we've also like peeled back another layer of our 4 main characters, and we definitely got to do that this time around as well. And with each new thing that we learn about them, I just love them more and more. So I haven't really told you very much about this particular story because, like I said, in order to do so, because this one is such a maze of things going on, to really tell you anything about it, it would give a lot of the story away, so I can't do that. But there were just so many things about this, kind of like the hidden story within a story, the inn that has ties that go all the way back to the Civil War, the Cherokee Indian tie-ins to this book, which really intrigued me because I don't know if most of you know this, but I am part Blackfoot Indian. My father and my grandmother come from that tribe, so my grandmother on my father's side. So I have a lot of Blackfoot Indian heritage in my bloodline, and so the tie-ins to that were really interesting, and the folklore around birds, and particularly the red bird, was very interesting, and kind of that Civil War ghost story kind of aspect that wove into it was just very interesting. So this one, I felt the murder mysteries definitely are a huge part of this story, but I almost felt like this one was more just a cozy story with a murder. It felt much more heartwarming than the first two. It's definitely a slower pace than the first two, but there's just something so magical about all of the little details in this story. Of course, there are beautiful book quotes at the beginning of every chapter, just like all of the other books. And there's just so many beautiful little, tie-ins and love stories to books. Cats that have the names of book characters, and funny coffee mugs that have book quotes or bookish, taglines on them. If you love books, if you love murder mysteries, if you love cozy, quaint little towns and bookstores, I've said it the first 2 times, I cannot recommend this series enough. I absolutely loved this one. I have loved all of the books so far in this series. I have 2 more to go, and I will definitely be bringing you guys along. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if it feels like I'm just leading you on and not giving you any information. I'm also sorry that my puppy keeps barking. But if you've made it this far, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will see you very soon. Until later.